Hello and welcome everybody to Catweazle's playthrough of Arkham Horror. Just set the board up. Didn't want to bore you all to death while I set the actual basics up, but what I will do is I will go through the actual scenario that we're going to play. We're going to play a core game scenario that was written by a guy named Kung Fro on Bull Game Geek. He's done 10. Hopefully I'll get to go through all of the scenarios. That's what I'm going to try and do. But the first one is set up specifically for the core game. But just anybody who hasn't seen Arkham Horror before, just a quick look around the board and everything. Like I say, I don't particularly do tutorials or anything, but just so you just know where everything is. This is the city of Arkham. It's currently covered in all my crap, but that'll disappear as I just go through the bits and pieces. But generally it's split into several districts, such as North Side, Downtown. This is South Side down here that you can probably see. And each district will have 2 or 3 specific locations. So for example, Southside has the Historical Society, the South Church and Mars Boarding House. Each of these locations has a little diamond, either red or green, and that lets us know how stable the location is. Each location is either stable or unstable, and what does that mean? Well, it means unstable locations can get a gate to another world, and these are the other worlds right down the side. So unstable locations, red diamond, could get a gate and a monster coming out of the gate. The green ones, they're so-called stable locations, so you won't get a gate there. So that's the board, and your players will actually move around the board, attempting to close gates and fight monsters, all that sort of stuff, but that'll become clear as we actually play the game. One of the things that we do at startup is we have to put a clue token on each unstable location. Clue tokens are sort of like, they're sort of like currency in the game, not so much like dollars or pounds. They just allow you to do things like close and seal gates, for example. You can spend them to get re-rolls. So if you're doing a skill check or fighting a monster, for example, or you want to pass a certain test and you fail, you can actually spend clue tokens to re-roll. But the main use for them is for sealing gates, and that's very important, and that'll become clear as we actually play the game. So on the base board there's actually 11, I think, unstable locations, and they each get a clue token at the start of the game. So I've set that up. So that's pretty much the board set up. I've already mentioned the locations and the city itself. There are some other things. There's the other world. Each other world down here, there's 7, I think. Oh no, 8. There's 8 other worlds on the base board. So you've got another dimension, the Abyss, City of the Great Race, Yuggoth, etc. And when a gate opens in an unstable location, they will lead to one of these other worlds. You have to go through another world, then go back to the location that you came from most of the time, and you're then able to close or seal that gate. At the bottom here we have a terror track. Various things in the game will trigger that, but generally it's when we get too many monsters on the board. The more monsters we get on the board, the more terror affects the city of Arkham, and the more terror that you get, obviously the terror track will move up. As the terror track moves up, people flee the town and shops shut. So as you see, purple there, purple number 3, the general store, which is in the purple area of Rivertown, that will shut. Then when you get to the orangey 6, the curiosity shop in the orangey north side, colour-coded part of town will shut, and then finally the Red 9, the old magic shop down here, will shut. Allies will also leave town, but you'll get to learn about allies in a second. And the other things that we've got are what's called the city limits. We have the outskirts. We're only allowed a certain number of monsters in town at any one time. If we go over that monster limit, then the overflow will go into the outskirts. The outskirts itself has a limit, and when that limit is exceeded, that's when your terror track starts going up. We also have the sky, and the sky is for flying monsters. So, but again, explaining how they get to the sky and how they can come out of the sky, that'll come out during the gameplay. And there's also another section called Lost in Time and Space. If you're in another world, things can happen to you whereby you can't find your way back, and you will end up lost in time and space. Generally, you become delayed for a turn, and then you can go back into the town, but not always. Sometimes it ends up that your character gets devoured, which isn't nice, basically. So that's just the basic board. We have a few special things that we have to do as part of the scenario that I mentioned. As I said, this is the core scenario, Chapter 1, Cool Air. There's just a bit of flavour text that I'll read to you. The year is 1926, and it is the height of the roaring 20s. Flappers dance till dawn in smoke-filled speakeasies, drinking alcohol supplied by rum runners and the mob. It's a celebration to end all celebrations, in the aftermath of the war to end all wars. Yet a dark shadow grows in the city of Arkham. Alien entities known as Ancient Ones lurk in the emptiness beyond space and time, writhing at the gates between worlds. These gates have begun to open, and must be closed before the Ancient Ones make our world their ruined dominion. Only a handful of investigators stand against their Arkham horror. Will they prevail? Well, we're about to find out, kids. Right, some of the things that are done in the scenario are specifically to make it more thematic. So he's put a lot of thought into it, and he's done a fantastic job. Part of it is you have to selectively see like the card decks, and you're only allowed certain investigators and certain monsters, and it's just to improve the theme. First up, our ancient one is Ithaca. Now, Ithaca's like a sort of Wendigo, frost demon, Sasquatch type. Basically knocks around in cold places, the cold places between worlds. He prefers it very cold, and goes around eating people and stealing warmth, all that sort of stuff. He's not a very nice guy, and this is him. Just move the Doom tokens out of the way. This is Ithaca. As you can see, he's a nice chap. Just to read what he's all about. Icy winds. While Ithaca stirs in his slumber, basically during the main part of the game, before he wakes up, any investigator in a street area are these rectangular areas. The circular areas are locations. At the end of the mythos phase, I'll go through the phases later, loses 1 stamina. So basically, if you're caught outside, it's very icy, he's a frost demon, you lose some of his stamina. All weather cards, they come through the mythos deck, are discarded without their special effects taking place. So if it says like it's going to rain or it's going to be foggy, that doesn't apply, because Ithaca is in town and it's icy. So that's why they don't count. I'll leave the battle to such time as we're unfortunate enough to actually fight him. His other bit of special text are his worshippers. Ithaca's worshippers eat the flesh of their fellow men, gaining supernatural power through their dark practice. Cultists have their toughness increased by 2. Cultists are a type of monster. They're basically human beings, but they're counted as monsters, and this is what Ithaca grants them. The cultists are the ones trying to bring him back. Basically, there's these nutters about who want power over others, and they think by worshipping Ithaca and bringing him back to life from his ancient slumber that they're going to get all that. But they get the toughness increased by 2. Right, and that's Ithaca. His Doom track, this is what this is, goes up to 11, so that's roughly 11 turns. If you got a Doom token every turn, we've got 11 turns to like defeat him and stop him waking up before he does wake up, and then we're in big trouble. Right, let's put him back there. Now, what else? I've already mentioned that we've had to mess with the decks a bit and with the monsters that were allowed, but they're all for theme, basically. So these are the monsters that you have to take out, but don't worry, I know there's a big list, but there are still plenty left. Many monsters are left. The main reasons for taking them out, again, are theme. For example, Innsmouth. The Innsmouth Horror is a separate expansion. You've got a lot of Deep Ones and Deep One hybrids and stuff. They're really sea-based. While we've got river docks in Arkham, you don't actually have the sea, so they don't really thematically fit in. You could have them in if you wanted, but for the scenario, they're not. The Mythos cards, as I said, like some of the decks, are changed. And again, with the Mythos deck, we've taken some out. We're just using the Arkham Horror Mythos deck. But some of these cards are actually thematically linked to other H.P. Lovecraft stories. So, goat-like creature spotted in the woods. That's the Black Goat of the Woods. The Festival. That's Kingsport. Feds raid Arkham, that's like the Feds raiding Innsmouth in the Shadow over Innsmouth. So these sort of things are just taken out for the flavour. They are added back in later scenarios, the ones that deal with Innsmouth or Kingsport. But generally, you'll see this as we go through the scenarios. Some are taken out and then they're replaced at a later date. So I've already... See, we've got a nice thick Mythos card deck. This is the bad stuff. About 90% of these are bad stuff. 5% are neither here nor there, and only about 5% are like nice. But the ones we had to get rid of, like Things of Darkness, for example, and the Terrible Experiment, I've already taken those out as per the scenario and put them in the discard pile, so they're down there already. So we'll just shuffle what's left. Of the deck of doom. So there we go. Whoop. Shuffle them again, seeing as I didn't see that, but just in case, and cut it as well. Right, put that up there. Ready to start off. The other thing that we have to have a look at is the gates. So if a gate opens on one of these unstable locations, it will go to a specific place, and once we get there, we'll have encounters, otherworld encounters, and that's what the gate deck is for. It will actually say things like, if it's the Great Halls of Celiano, your red-eyed reflection in the mirror captures your attention, stay here next turn. So depending on which other world you end up in, you get these. I have put a Curse of the Dark Pharaoh one in, which is this one. And the reason, again, that this is in is for theme. Because this is the Plateau of Leng green red card. And you have to fight an ancient one, and the ancient one that you fight is Ithaca. This is a bit unlike him waking up in the normal course of a game, because you're actually in the Plateau of Leng, and the Plateau of Leng is where Ithaca lives. So if you're in the Plateau of Leng and you draw this card, then you've bumped into Ithaca on his home turf and you have to fight him. Now basically you don't want to fight an Ancient One any day of the week, anywhere. If we like get too many gates opening, or for whatever reason the Ancient One awakens, we're in big trouble. They are very hard to beat. So getting this card, if you're in the Plateau of Leng, isn't nice. It's going to be extremely hard to beat, but he won't wake up. You're essentially dealing with, I don't know, his spirit back in his home dimension. It doesn't affect him waking up on Earth, but it's still a very nasty card to get. So we've added that in, and now we'll shuffle that in, and hopefully not get it during the course of the game. All these gate cards are colour coded, as are the other worlds up the side. You see these little coloured dots, and they correspond to the colours of the decks in here. As I said, that was a green and a red. So if you're up at the Plateau of Leng, which is a green and red dot, then, and you pulled that out, you'd have to face Ithaca. So, but hopefully that won't happen. So that's the gate deck shuffled. Speaking of Ancient One battles, if he does wake up, we're going to be using the Epic battle variant, and that's out of Kingsport. These are the cards. There are some green cards and some red ones. The green cards are bad. The Ancient One has woken up, and these green cards, they do things like, say, investigators go first in combat, or the Ancient One goes first in combat, and they're bad. So, at the start of the game, you shuffle these, just on the off chance that the Ancient One does wake up. And you do the same with the red deck. What's the difference between the red deck and the green deck? These are worse. They're bad. These are even worse. And what you do is, after you've shuffled them, the green deck goes on the red deck. So at the start, things are just bad of the Ancient One battle. Really bad. But by the time you get into the red deck, if you haven't killed him yet, things are getting very bad indeed. So we'll put those in there. As part of that, when you're going through that deck, during the final battle, they may ask you to pull an Ancient One card. And there's 3 of those for each Ancient One. I've picked the ones out for Ithaca because that's the Ancient One that we're playing. You give these a shuffle as well. But we'll only pick these if instructed by the Epic Battle cards. So we'll put those next to. Put those there. Hopefully we won't have to use those decks, because things will already be grimmer than a grim thing if we're doing that. So that's the Mythos and Gate cards all sorted, as well as the Epic Battle cards and the Ancient One card. Items and skills. Use all items and skills and allies from Arkham Horror except for the following. Well, as far as allies go, there are only 11 Arkham Horror allies. These are all here. You can look at them, so it's not a case of shuffling them or anything. Normally cards, encounters will make these guys available, and depending on how you deal with the card, then you'll get an ally or you won't get an ally. So anybody can look at those at any time. But as I mentioned with the terror track, once the terror track goes up, you will lose allies. So you lose a random ally every time the terror track goes up, because basically they get the shits and leave town. So they're all in there, and they're all ready to go. As far as items and skills go, again, thematically, some things are taken out. The main things are kept in. These are all Arkham Horror. There are no additional components from other expansions, because this is a core scenario. But even in the core scenario, we're taking like some of the spells out, and they're just for thematic reasons, like the Voice of Ra. That's an Egyptian spell that goes better with the Curse of the Dark Pharaoh, so that gets taken out, for example. Similarly, in the unique item deck, we've took out the King in Yellow. There are a few King in Yellow cards. Again, it's more of a King in Yellow theme, which we're not doing in this one, so we just take a few of them out. Take one skill, we take a skill out, which is Expert Occultist as well. So, but all the rest of them are fine. So you'll see these come into play when we actually pick our investigators. They will get some starting equipment, so we will look at the skills, the unique items, the common items and the spells. So we'll look at those in a bit. Other things that we have, in addition to the allies, those are the other allies from other expansions, we're not using those. We have the Injury and Madness cards from Dunwich. Originally, what happened in Arkham Horror, if you got knocked unconscious or you went insane, you lost half your items and your money and stuff like that. They brought in this variant, which meant if you got knocked unconscious, you could keep your clue tokens and your money and that sort of thing, but you had to take something bad like heart damage, and you'd get a penalty for the rest of the game. Then if you take another injury and it's exactly the same, so you got another heart damage, well, that'd be it. Game over, man. Similar thing with the Madness cards, things like narcolepsy and concussions and what have you, all that sort of thing. So those will be in play, and these are the Arkham special cards, they're called. So you can get things like a Silver Twilight Lodge membership, you can become Deputy of Arkham, you can go to the bank, get bank load, you can be blessed or you can be cursed. I'll explain that during play if it comes up. And you can get retainers from, say, the newspaper, where you get a couple of dollars each turn, for example. So all these in a business card holder, they're all at the side of the board, ready to go. All the things here it tells you to take out, I've taken out. And one last thing for the scenario, theme wise, is they'll say which investigators you can have and which you can't. Again, theme, for example, there's an investigator called Silas Marsh. He's really an Innsmouth type of guy, born in Innsmouth, came with the Innsmouth expansion, he's a sailor, and he's related to the Marsh family that run his Innsmouth. Really, he's best in an Innsmouth-based scenario, hence he's not on the list in here. So some are taken out and some are added in. Again, as you go through the scenarios, the more thematic investigators are involved with the more thematic scenarios for them. Right, and there's no special rules in this one. Some of them do have special rules, but not this one. So that's the Cool Air scenario that we're going to be playing. I'll put that over there because I'll need to keep an eye on it. Right, what other things do we want to do? There's some little tricks you can do. Here's some cards that come with Miskatonic Horror, which are very useful. Number of players is 4. I'm going to play 4 characters. That means we can have 7 open gates. If we get more than 7 open gates, game over. The Ancient One awakes, which is virtually the same thing. Outskirts limit, which is down here. So it's the number of monsters that are allowed to overflow is 4. So I've seen people just put a little dice there, just so you know you're allowed 4 in to remind yourself. The monster limit is 7. So once you get 7 monsters on the Arkham board, any extra go into the outskirts. If you go over 4, they all go back to the monster bag, and the terror track goes up 1. Terror track goes up 1. We lose an ally, but you'll see that in play. Every time a gate opens, you draw 1 monster. So that's that. Just to remind me, I put that at the top of the board. Right, what's the next thing to do? Oh, gates. Gates. A couple of gates have been taken out again due to the scenario. So at the top here, we're using all the gate tokens from Arkham Horror, so we're not using the Dunwich ones, for example. But out of those Arkham Horror ones, we're just taking one of the Dreamlands and a relay out. So there's a Dreamlands, there's a relay. I'll put it over here with the other gates that we're not using from other expansions. So this is the gate stack that we're using. And whenever a gate opens, after I shuffle these slightly, we just pick one off the top. And that will be the gate to another world that's opened in a particular location. So I'll put that stack here. So next to Sunny Ithaca, next to the board. I'll also put, these are sealed gate tokens that I got from Litco. There's 6 of them. If you manage to seal 6 gates, you'll see how, well, I hope you'll see how we do that during the game. If you manage to seal 6 gates and the Ancient One, he doesn't awaken, the town's saved, everybody loves us. Right, the next thing to do is, obviously we need 4 investigators. 4 investigators that are going to prevent the Ancient One from waking up and save the world. Unfortunately, these guys, they're not like spandex wearing like superheroes. They're not like a righteous storm of oblivion riding on a crest of righteous fury or anything. They're just ordinary Joes, most of them. In fact, there's plenty of insane crackpots, like revenge-driven nutters, like wild-eyed adventurers, like there's all sorts. You'll see them as we go through. Like we've got Mandy Thompson, who's really good, Rita Young, Caroline Fern. These are just the 15 that we can use in this particular scenario. Zoe, you know, there's Val Kilmer, even Bob Jenkins. They're all in there. So what we'll do, out of these 15, we'll give them a quick shuffle. Nothing major. Right, there we go. And because we've got 15, what I've got here is a D10 and a D6. Obviously, if we roll a 16, that'll be the number 1. If we roll a 2, it'd be 2, all the way up to like 15. So our first roll is, we've got 12, 7, 8, 7, 8 and 12, 7, 8, 9 and 12 we've got. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Charlie Kane, the politician. 8. Roland Banks, the Fed. 9. Rita Young, the athlete. 10. 11. 12. Skids O'Toole, the ex-convict. What's funny about all those is we haven't actually picked an investigator that came with the base set. All these other guys like Ashcan Pete and what have you, they all came with the actual base game. But all the ones we've picked there are either from like Skids, he's from Innsmouth, Rita Young's from Dunwich Horror, and we've got Roland Banks from Innsmouth, and we've got Charlie Kane from Kingsport. But it doesn't matter because these are quite generic. That's why they're in the scenario. They're not specifically tied to Innsmouth or Dunwich or Kingsport. So these are our 4 peeps. So let's have a look at them. Charlie Kane, the politician, 4 sanity, 6 stamina. This is normally taken out of 10. So if somebody has a 7 in something, they'll have a 3 in something else. If they have 5, it'll be 5 in the other. So normally this adds up to 10, these two numbers. So, lives in the administration building, which is down here. So they all start in a particular location in Arkham. He has $9, some random possessions, we'll do those in a minute. He's got a focus of 2, I'll mention that in a minute. Connections, any phase, Charlie may gain allies that have been returned to the box. So remember when I said the terror track goes up and allies leave town? Not as far as Charlie's concerned, he's got connections, he can get them back to town. So that's a good one to have. Settle down, Charlie may pay 2 clue tokens to prevent the terror level from increasing by 1. He may do this as often as he likes. Not so good. Really don't want to use clue tokens on anything else but sealing gates. But let's have a read of his little bio. They have a biography on the back. The story so far. Charlie Kane promised the people of Arkham a safer future. He made a lot of promises. Lower taxes, better schools, less crime. It was part of the job after all. He said what he had to say to get elected, and then he set about doing what he could to help people. Although he had to do things he wasn't proud of, Charlie always worked for the greater good. The people came first. So when Charlie Kane started hearing the reports, he put the people first. Of course he couldn't tell anyone, couldn't reveal what he had pieced together. Reports from various parts of city government that painted a macabre portrait of Arkham's future. For one, who would believe him? For another, how would widespread panic serve the public good? Still, Charlie always had connections in town, so he gathered up his reports and paid a visit to Professor Grant at Miskatonic University. The fact that he now stands before Professor Grant's mutilated corpse in Professor Grant's blood-splashed office does not fill Charlie Kane with confidence. Wouldn't fill me with confidence either, Charlie. So Charlie has got a good idea of what's going down. He knows there's something wrong. Nothing like turning up to a buddy's office and finding him in bits all over it to suss out that something's not quite right. So Charlie Kane, he's our first investigator. So we'll just put him over there for a second. Next, Skids O'Toole, the ex-convict. 3 sanity, 7 stamina. So, bit of a nutter, lives on the edge. His home's Mars boarding house. He has $5, 3 clue tokens and 1 common item, an axe. See what I mean? Sort of man you want to be running around with 3 sanity with an axe. Random possessions, 2 common items, 1 unique item, 1 skill. He's got a focus of 2. His special abilities, School of Hard Knocks, any phase, once per skill check. Skids may roll 2 bonus dice for each 1 he rolled. So if he rolls a 1, he can roll 2 bonus dice. That's useful. He may do this before or after spending clue tokens on the roll. Brilliant. Criminal record. Skids cannot become the deputy of Arkham. Neither may he gain a bank loan. Do you remember when I mentioned the special cards? Like the blessings and the retainers? Well, he can't become a deputy of Arkham and he can't get the bank loan from the bank. Because he's a crim. Right, what's his story? Sure, Skids had knocked over a few banks before they caught him, but he'd never killed anyone. Scared someone? Intimidated someone into handing over his possessions? Yeah, okay, he'd done that, but he wasn't a bad person. He was just desperate. When he told the cops that he'd needed money for an operation for his mother, they just laughed. Apparently they'd heard that excuse once or twice before. His mother died of her illness during the 2nd year of his sentence. After that, no one came to visit him. He managed to cling to his sanity by befriending his cellmate, a scrawny little guy named Brad Hollins. Brad was a weird guy. He would rant and rave in quiet voice every evening about the old ones and tell Skids about bizarre adventures he'd had while dreaming. Skids humoured him till one night he'd woken up to hear Brad chanting strange words, still asleep. Smelling smoke, Skids turned to look at his cellmate just in time to see Brad scream and burst into flames. The screws had tried to pin it on him, but really, there was no way they could get it to stick. Now, finally out on parole, Skids finds himself staying in a place that Brad frequently mentioned in his ravings, the city of Arkham. Perhaps here he could find some answers to the questions raised by his friend's death. So, good old Skids. His sanity's hanging on by a thread, but he's not the sort of guy who you mess around with. So, he could be quite a good guy for taking down some monsters. He looks like he punches people in the groin. So that's Skids. Rita Young, the athlete. 4 sanity, 6 stamina. She's home in the police station. She's got $4, 2 clue tokens, a special retainer. So it's one of those special cards here. Random possession, 2 common items, 1 unique item, 1 skill. A focus of 2. Special ability, she's resilient, any phase. Whenever Rita draws 1 or more injury or madness cards, which are these, she draws 1 extra card, then discards 1 of them. So essentially she can draw 2 cards, decide which one she wants. In addition, if Rita gains a duplicate of an injury or madness card she already has, the second card has no effect. That's really good. Because if you do get 2 injuries that are the same, do you remember I mentioned that you'd get devoured? Well, not Rita. She's an athlete, man. Right, let's read her story. Growing up in the South, Rita has often had to fight discrimination in one form or another. Although her family was poor, she worked hard and received a scholarship to Miskatonic University, where she joined the track and field team. Now she may have to fight for her life. Somebody is after her, that much she's sure of. She has no idea who it is or why they want her, but there have been several strange men hanging around her dorm. Flaming hell, no shit. Last week her roommate was assaulted while wearing Rita's jacket, and Rita feels certain that it was a case of mistaken identity. That's right, Rita, it's not the jocks. Today, Rita spent several hours trying to convince the police to do something, but the sheriff says that his hands are tied without more evidence. Still, while running away might be the best way to avoid this premonition of personal doom hanging over her, that's never been Rita's style. Whether her stalkers are members of the Ku Klux Klan or something even more sinister, she's going to face them head on. The same way she's been facing the world all her life. Ride on, sister. Yeah. Rita. She doesn't take no prisoners. She's going to be pretty kick-ass as well, like Skids. I like it. Couple of groin punches. Right, our last investigator, Roland Banks, the Fed. 4 sanity, 6 stamina. We're not doing very well on sanity. The more sanity we have, the better chance we'd have with spellcasters. But we seem to be a team of groin and face punchers. Never mind. Home, Arkham Asylum. Fixed possessions, $3, 2 clue tokens. Random possessions, 1 common item, 1 unique item, 1 ally. Oh, he gets an ally and a skill. He's intuitive, that's his special ability. If Roland has fewer than 2 clue tokens, he gains 1 clue token. Clue tokens are like gold dust. That's excellent ability. Expense account, if Roland has less than $2, he gains $1. Fantastic. Yeah. Money's always useful. Clue tokens, especially useful. That's great news. His focus is 3. His story, methodical, by the book. If you looked in the Federal Agent's Handbook, you'd find a picture of Roland Banks next to those sections. At least if it had any pictures, you would. Where other agents found the rules restricting and annoying, Roland took comfort in procedure. It was a relief to have guidelines to follow in any given situation, well, at least until his latest case. Try as he might, Roland could find no mention in the handbook of what to do when confronted with strange creatures, gates through time and space, or magic spells. This case was rapidly escalating into a fiasco, and if he dropped the ball, losing his job was the least of his worries. Sitting outside the Arkham Asylum after an interview with yet another demented witness, Roland dropped his battered agent's handbook back into his briefcase and sighed. At least the agency was sending him some backup. Maybe they could help him make some sense out of this mess. That must be the ally he's getting. But basically, Roland Banks, rather than being a Fox Mulder, looks more like a Dan Scully. But he's on our team and we're glad to have him. So that's our 4 investigators. As part of that, they will have, between each other, these relationship cards that came with Lurker of the Threshold. Basically, it just means that every investigator has a relationship with one of the other investigators, and they will get various buffs for that during the game. So we'll hand those out in a minute. And Innsmouth also had something called personal stories. As you can see, there's quite a lot of cards here, mainly because there's 48 investigators in the whole game, including the expansions. And they each get 2 of these cards each. So these are for Patrice, for example. And what you have a pass or fail condition for your personal story. If you pass it or fail it, that relates to the second card. So that's Patrice's pass, that's Patrice's fail. If you pass or fail your personal story, then you'll either get a buff or a penalty that remains for the remainder of the game. So I'll dig those out in a second, and then we'll see about setting up the characters. So while I dig those out of this massive pile and get everything set up, I'll just pause the video.